morning. This is Scott Cullen. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Canada Report. It's Friday morning. It's Fridays with Frank time. Hey, Frank, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm almost wide awake.
For this episode of Fridays with Frank, you received an email from Barry Clark of Perry ProTech, and he was wondering, because this is a dilemma he's facing, how dealers are compensating sales reps for equipment that they're selling or trying to sell that's on back order. And and I know you've been out talking to people, what have you learned?
It's as usual when you talk to dealers, it's all over the lot, and it never ceases to amaze me how these guys can go their disparate ways and always end up at the point they want to be. It's like they come together. It's a credit to the distribution. It's the real entrepreneurial spirit. You got to challenge, deal with it. Anyway, here's what we found out, and I have to start with my good friend Keith Allison Sistel in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I like to talk to Keith because, he's the kind of guy who always has a slightly different approach, and he always comes up with something that totally surprises me. Any rate, sure enough, I contacted Keith, and Keith said, back orders? I didn't have any back orders. Now, here's a guy who is a Ricoh, Konica Minolta, and HP dealer. He had no back orders. And then he reminded me, CJ and I went to visit him a few years ago, and he took us to his brand new warehouse, which is, it looks something like a UPS terminal in terms of size and docks and everything. I said, "This is your warehouse?" And he said, "Yeah." And of course, it's fantastic, state of the art, with conference rooms in it, training rooms, and an enormous warehouse. And sure enough, filled with inventory. And internally, one of the things that I started questioning, and unless this guy's got a huge wholesale business, that's a hell of an inventory for a dealer to be carrying. And I didn't say anything because I would never question Keith. Sure enough, we started talking about this. He says, "Frank, he said, everybody was always criticizing me for excessive inventory. Well, you know what? Who's wrong now?" He said, "My guys are happy. We got products to ship. They can go out and knock on a door at a customer and said, well, I've been doing business with so-and-so, and say, look, we got the product and we can deliver it to you tomorrow. How's that?" That type of approach. So that was Keith's answer. He had, not that he was anticipating a pandemic, but for whatever it was in his makeup, he felt secure by having a substantial inventory so that he would never be in a problem where he couldn't deliver to a customer. It's kind of a lot of years ago, a lot of dealers used to think that way and, be very conscious of having enough inventory on hand. And I think part of that kind of came forward with Keith, but to his great credit, that's one company has no problem. The second one I contacted was Bill Frazier, Reading, Pennsylvania. And Bill said, well, being a Sharp dealer, I don't have any back order problems. And I started to say to myself, and me, I pick out these things randomly. They're dealers I feel I can talk to. So now, so far, Barry, I haven't come up with anything for you. But of course, Bill has another line, which is Canon. And he said, he feels, he said, look, when the times were the worst at the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't let anybody go. Those guys were here. They had a job, whether they're working from home or working here. So I think they appreciated that, and they've been very loyal and hung in with us through the worst of it. And fortunately, as he was saying, because Sharp really didn't have a serious backorder problem by virtue of being owned by Foxconn, he was in good shape, so he wasn't having any problem and didn't have to make any major adjustments. Then I finally found somebody who was having a back order problem, and I don't want to mention his name. I don't think it's appropriate. At any rate, he said he came up with a formula that as long as the salesmen were, in terms of placing their orders now, understanding there is a back order situation, as long as the salesman, by their performance, is over 80% of his quota, he's going to get paid. If he's under 80%, he said, I give him a draw. I asked, that was basically it. It seemed to be working for him. He said he didn't, he wasn't in a position to say how bad it was for him in terms of the back orders, but with the lines he carried, he had to be having a problem, but this is how he was managing it. And he said it was working for him, and I believed him. The next dealer I spoke to said that I pay salaries. Through thick and thin, they get a salary. And that seems to be that seems to be holding them over. We don't do any advance commissioning or anything like that. And he said, we're fine. He said, ideally, would they like to be able to get their commissions and their bonuses? Yeah. But evidently the money we pay them is good enough that they can continue to meet their expenses. And all I can say is they're coming in to some very, very big paydays.